We're going to now look at chapters 3 through 6. Chapters 3 through 6 in Daniel are a little bit different from the rest of the chapters, given that the rest of the chapters deal primarily with dreams and visions. Chapters 3 through 6 deal more with character and identify the types of characters that will be needed in the latter days amongst the Most High's people. Because remember, the foundation that we just laid, or that was laid for us, that we just reviewed with Nebuchadnezzar's dream, extended into the latter days, and the emphasis was put on the latter days, and so that's where the focus is. And so these stories that we're about to cover deal with the type of characters that will be necessary among the people of the Most High in the latter days, contrasted to the characters of the enemy of the Most High. So, what is biblical typology? Just using Merriam-Webster's definition, a type. So, typology is a study of types, and a type is a person or thing, as in the Old Testament, believed to foreshadow another, as in the New Testament. You might hear like Moses was a type of Christ, or other individuals were types of Christ. Paul says in the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 10, speaking of the experience of the Israelites, he says, "Now all these things happened unto them as in samples or types, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world have come." So typology or types, these are all examples of what to expect in the times we're living now. Some just quick examples of typology in the Old Testament. The sanctuary service and the animals that were sacrificed were all types of the Messiah's ministry, whereas the animals that were killed, they were typical or types of him shedding his blood for us on Calvary's cross. When the priest and the high priest would perform their ministry with that blood in the sanctuary, they were types of the Messiah ministering on our behalf in the heavenly sanctuary. And so the experience of the individuals in Daniel are types of the experience of people living in the latter days. And hopefully that makes sense. So just looking at this again briefly in this one slide, we're not going to cover all these chapters in detail. The point here is for you to read these yourselves with a little biblical guidance. Chapter 3 deals with persecution for obedience. I mentioned this with regard to the Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah being on the plains of Shinar, where the statue was erected that Nebuchadnezzar built of all gold. Because again, the vision said that the head of gold would be replaced by an inferior metal, silver, with the next kingdom. And then of course the third kingdom would be of brass, the fourth of iron, and so forth. So you see a decrease in the value of these metals over time. But I suppose Nebuchadnezzar wanted his kingdom to last forever. So in Daniel 3, he erects this statue of all gold. And at a certain time when music was played, everyone was to bow down and worship this image. But the three worthies, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, refused to bow down, and as such were cast into the fiery furnace. And in that fiery furnace, they were joined by a presence of the Most High in delivering them through that experience. Chapter 4 deals with humility versus pride. We see this in Nebuchadnezzar's experience, where he looks over all of Babylon and says, "This is, look at this empire that I have built." Whereas we just saw in Daniel 2 that it was the Most High God who gave him that empire. And even we saw that the Most High referred to Nebuchadnezzar as his servant. And so that got to his head the fact that he had this vast empire, and instead of acknowledging the creator who gave it to him, he takes the credit for himself. But after his experience in the wilderness for those 7 years, he is restored after he acknowledges the creator. In chapter 5, we see judgment for disobedience with one of the offspring of Nebuchadnezzar now ruling Babylon, Belshazzar, and he denies the creator. And this is where we see the writing on the wall with the fall of Babylon. So instead of giving reverence to the creator and the vessels of his worship, it completely disrespected all of that. And as a result, the kingdom was taken away from him. Then in chapter 6, we see persecution for obedience. We see this in Daniel's experience, where he is thrown into the lion's den for refusing to obey human law with regard to worship. And he was protected during that tribulation. When he was thrown into the lion's den, the mouths of the lions were closed so that he could be delivered. And all of these are just examples of character development typology. Read those stories, you'll see, you get you get a glimpse into the difference in the character that will be necessary among the Most High people in the latter days, contrasted by the character of the enemy of his people in the last days. Where it's like Daniel 6, it's all the politicians that are creating laws, enforcing worship, enforcing their version of morality. And we see a lot of that happening these days, with some politicians wanting to create laws that they believe advance their version of what's right, and in doing so marginalize and whole groups of people as a result. But once this happens in a spiritual sense, those who don't comply with these human laws will be persecuted as a result, but those who are faithful to the Most High will be delivered. All right, so that's chapters 3 through 6 in a nutshell. Again, just want to emphasize that these chapters aren't necessarily dealing with prophecy. They're more so dealing with character typology, so that you can see the types of characters that we must possess in the latter days to be a part of the people of the Most High in completing the work that He has for us. And these are the characters that will reveal our obedience to Yahuwah or His enemy in those latter days.